Welcome to Across the Park podcast, the only place you can hear banter and debate from both sides of Stanley Park, whether it be blue or red. Sponsored by Their Clothing, Camper Kings UK, and affiliation with BetMate. Right, hello, welcome to Across the Park Extra. Myself, Millsy, delighted to be joined by friends of the show, Pricey, and we are talking all things Everton Football Club tonight. We're going back on a time machine way back when to talk to a man who gave us a few good memories, one in particular in a Merseyside derby. It is, of course, Mr. Danny Cadamarteri. Danny, thank you for joining us. First of all, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, and thanks for the invite on. I know it's been a bit of a slog for you to try and get me on. I've been so busy and got a lot going on at the moment, so managed to get it on eventually, and hopefully it's been worth the wait.
Oh yeah, top man. Thank you very much for this. But we're going to talk your Everton career. But before we get into what was probably, in my opinion, as a supporter, your best season for the club, 97-98, let's go a little bit before that, 96-97. On the last game of the season, you came on a half-time against Chelsea for Everton legend Klaus Thompson. The week leading up to that game, were you aware that you were going to get minutes? Was that the plan? I know Dave Watson was the manager then. Were you always going to play that game, or was it a bit of a shock for yourself as well?
Yeah, it was a shock. I'd not been anywhere around the first team at all, and obviously the manager had left, and Waggy and Willie Donachie had taken over, and I was playing in the A team on the Saturday morning, and I was actually on match duty. So basically, we played in the morning A or B team at Belfield, and we left from Belfield and went down to the stadium for match duty, and either we were on match kit or collecting the balls or just pottering around, really. It was part of our jobs as a YT. And we played Manchester City at Belfield, and I got brought off at half-time, and I was raging because, I fancied myself a little bit at the time, and so I was a bit grumpy as to why I'd been brought off, and Conor Avid said, "You're going down to the stadium, and you're in the squad." So I literally kind of come off, got myself sorted, showered, changed, went back to my digs, didn't have a suit, so I borrowed a suit off my landlord and got myself down to Goodison Park, thinking, I'd heard that, and I think, was it Andrei Kanchelskis? Somebody was having a fitness test, and I might be the unnamed sub with a view to maybe being on the bench if that fitness test was failed. Anyway, I ended up, long story short, on the bench, and that was it. That was my baptism of fire of being on the bench for the first team before obviously getting on.
That's good, and it means there's no nerves that way, is there? You haven't got the night before to worry about it and all that type of thing, have you?
No, yeah, no build up, no climax, no nothing. Literally, kind of thinking on the job, going down, getting down to the stadium, not knowing kind of where to put myself. Usually, I'm used to sweeping up in there and picking up kit, and then I was sat down with a kind of a makeshift shirt hung up on the side with the number 29 that had been stenciled in with it to make it look like a 28, which was my squad. Last game of the season, had run out of numbers and everything. So there you go, lad. There's your shirt there, mate.
Well, do you know what? From a fan's point of view, you played well that second half. And I remember going into the 97 pre-season, and you didn't really feature, but we were linked with every striker. We were linked with Ravanelli, Les Ferdinand, Dwight York. And I think about 6 weeks into the season, you came on against Derby, and then you scored on your first full start against Barnsley. What was that summer like for you? And then that 6 weeks where you're seeing all strikers being linked in, you're not quite part of it, and then to go into playing and scoring straight away at Goodison.
Yeah, it was a bit of a strange. The summertime, my dad had not been too well, so I'd been backwards and forwards to obviously visiting my dad, and he'd been a bit up and down. And then I'd come back into pre-season and he'd fallen sick again. So I'd not really had a great deal of involvement with the first team over pre-season. So, you kind of play the last game of the season and everybody was raving. I've got a bottle of champagne behind me here from I got man of the match in the game. Come on in the second half. And I think you probably come in as a kid expecting to be involved then because you've played that game and everybody was raving about me. So to come in pre-season and not be involved with the first team and hear all these names being bandied about, you're thinking, oh, that's just it. And then I spent the whole of my pre-season with my age group, with the YTs, and I kind of got a bit of a foot in the door to travelling with the first team. I think there was kind of a few apprehensions over a few injuries, and Michael Branch had been in and out, and he had a few knocks and niggles as well. And so I travelled with the first team down to Derby, and I think he did his hamstring after about 10 minutes or something like that. He meant to run into the channel and pulled his hamstring. And me and Nick Barmby were warming up down the other end, and Howard Kendall had just looked down and waved down. So obviously I'm just carrying on warming up, and Nick Barmby started jogging down, and like Viv Busby's like, no, send Danny. So he's kind of come back to now they want you, and it was a bit of an uncomfortable moment. England internationals jogging back up to send this young fuzzy-haired kid down, and that was it. I came on and, you know, dry mouth and palpitations, you know, full of energy and adrenaline, and I think I did all right in the game, and well, I must have done well enough because I kind of, you know, kept my place for the following week.
I mean, in hindsight, I made up the happened to Nick Barmby. Made up.
Couldn't have happened to a nicer fella, could it?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, once you got on the team, Danny, you scored against Barnsley. I think you scored against Scunthorpe as well in the League Cup, and you stayed in there. You scored 4 in 6, and all of a sudden we went from the first 2 or 3 games not playing very well to climbing the table. But one game I do want to ask you about in those 6 games was the Arsenal game at home. Now we're going against Arsene Wenger's Arsenal. We had lots of injuries and we were 2-0 down at half time. Yeah. Yourself and Michael Ball both score, and we nearly won the game. It was a brilliant game. Yeah, you've got the picture behind you there. There's a great picture of Tony Grant diving on you as well at 2-2. From a fan's point of view, that was an amazing game. Can you remember that game? What was it like to play in?
Yeah, it was for me, it was an unbelievable game for a few reasons. Real mixed emotion because, you know, I'm an Arsenal fan. Yeah. Down to my dad. My dad was a Gooner, and my dad had passed away. So I'd lost my father over the period of time of kind of getting into the first team. He never got a chance to watch me play, and being a Gooner and scoring in the game. I think my first thought, I was absolutely delighted. But I'm scoring against the team my dad had took me to see every time they were up north. But then in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh my God, I hope Arsenal win the league, because if they don't and it's down to losing points and Everton have scored, he'd be turning his grave. So it was mixed emotions, but amazing because playing against a team you support as a kid, playing at Goodison Park, you know, massive crowd, and scoring is, you know, and there was some of the players on display for Arsenal and Everton, but, you know, in particular for Arsenal was immense. So it was an incredible experience for me.
Oh, that's a brilliant story. Thanks for sharing that with us. I mean, just to touch upon that again, I mean, at a young age there, I think he was 17, you're looking around and seeing Dennis Bergkamp, David Seaman, Patrick Vieira. You're obviously an Arsenal fan growing up. As a young child, do you look around on the pitch, or have you got to detach from that and concentrate on the game?
Yeah, I think I didn't. It was kind of going back to that game when I came on a sub against Chelsea. That was the time when I started to realise that if I was going to be in that environment, I had to detach myself from them thought process, because I think only about a year or so earlier I'd been laid on my bed in Scholes watching Italian football on Channel 4 and watching Desailly absolutely rifle people all over the pitch. And then a couple of years later, year and a half later, I'm running down towards the park, towards the Gladys Street, shoulder to shoulder with Desailly. And I got shoulder to shoulder and kind of give him a nudge and knocked him off the ball. And it was like, that's Desailly. So when I came into the following season, I'm playing against a team of support, and, you know, there's people like Vieira and Petit and Overmars, and then more so for me, people like Ian Wright, who was one of my biggest heroes playing in the game. It was surreal, but at the end of the day, you're kind of putting yourself on a pedestal alongside these guys, and kind of can't put yourself as an inferior. You've got to put yourself as an equal to go and showcase your own ability and talent.
And do well against them as well. Your confidence must have been up after that. You know, on the pitch with them doing well, you must have been.
I think I was quite lucky because I was in an Everton team, and we had some good players in there as well, and some seasoned pros, and we had some young players that had come through, the likes of Dave Unsworth, who'd come through and been in the England, in and around the England squads as well, and Andy Inchcliffe and people like that, Dave Watson, and then you're never gonna be able to get above your station with Neville Southall in your squad. It was he could bring you down a peg or two within the blink of an eye. So I was lucky to be around some top players. Be it some of them were a little bit towards the back end of the career, so they'd had unbelievable experiences. So I was fortunate, to be at such an Everton's massive club, and one of the longest withstanding clubs in the Premier League with massive history, and had superstars throughout the years. So I was in good company of people that could keep my feet on the ground.
Yeah, fair enough. Look, around that time, a moment happened that I'm sure if you came to Goodison Park today, you still wouldn't buy a pint because it was such a great moment. Bjorn Torquemada in a Merseyside derby was thinking he was safe. You pounced on him, sent Neil Ruddock for a pie, and you put one past David James in a Merseyside derby. So 2 questions really in relation to that game and that goal. If you look back on how you felt at the time, did you realise how important that moment was? And second question, now when you look back, do you still look back at that really fondly?
First one. I did realise how important it was because I'd played a week so earlier in the mini derby, and right. When I joined Everton Football Club, we played Liverpool in 18 games, B-team games in the Lancashire League, played them in the Pontins League. And then when I played in the mini derby in the reserve game at Goodison, I think it was 14,000 there, and all the Scousers in our dressing room. We had a few Wolves in there, but all the Scousers would talk about was the game against Liverpool.
Yeah.
So and we became we were Plazzy Scousers. We were part of the furniture as well. So it was inbred within us as well. So I knew how important it was, and when I scored the goal in the mini derby, which was the winning goal, that stadium, the main stand erupted. So to go into the big derby, into the big boys game, first of all was an honour and a privilege because it's a game you just dream of playing when you're a young Liverpudlian, young Scouser. Do you know what I mean? Liverpudlian or Evertonian. So I kind of knew what to expect with that, but then to score was just when it just went numb. It went deafening to the stadium. So I did realise how important it was, and then when Graham Stewart picked me up, that just the echo and the electric intensity inside the ground just hit you. And when you say when I look back now, I think the amount of people that tag me in on Twitter and Facebook when it comes around, or this time back in 1997, 98 season and all the rest of it, people tag in on these games. It comes back and my kids watch it. It's on my Twitter and my Facebook. I do, but I always wonder if VAR had been introduced back in the day, what would have happened? Would it have been all the way down round, took the ball off Cavani, cut inside Ruddy, put it in the back of the net, and a big pause, all the eruption goes quiet, and they rewind it for a free kick back by the halfway line? I don't know. So
you know what? That'll be proper Everton. That.
I do reminisce. It's I've got pictures in the background here of games from the derby as well, and it's I reminisce, and it's a part of my life, which is amazing. Yeah.
And then I remember when around that time, obviously Liverpool had always had Robbie Fowler and you had Michael Owen coming through, and you were as a 11-year-old, 12-year-old, wherever we were at that time, you were our Michael Owen for Everton. There, you were the one that we were looking up to. Then, did you feel that at the time that you were Everton's version, if you like, of Fowler and Owen? And did you feel pressure around that, or was that just not something that came to you?
No, I think because I had a bit of cocky swag about me, I think I looked at it more as Michael Owen was Liverpool's version of me.
Yes, well said, lads.
But yeah, listen, there was loads of comparables made with myself and Michael, but that started about 3 or 4 years earlier when we had trials for the national squad under 15s and 16s, and he got into the national school and I fell short. So there'd always been comparables made of the two of us, and we didn't really have a rivalry as such. He was a fantastic player and had an unbelievable career. But we got on well. We played in under 16s and 18 squads together with England further down the line, and the under 21s very briefly. And he went on trajectory into playing in World Cups and having the career he had. But comparables are always made amongst players. But I kind of detached myself from that, and my focus was trying to play as many games for Everton as possible, really.
Yeah. And just on that, I've heard Michael Owen say sort of because he was so good so early, so young in the first team, playing well. He has explosive pace, that type of player, which is similar to yourself. He burnt out quite early, he says of himself. Did you feel that at all in your career, or is because we're playing those England at such a young age, and going through the ranks with them? Is that something that you feel like was something you could say for yourself, or did you not feel that?
No, I think circumstances were a lot different. I've mentioned this before. Is that I think when Michael came into the, I'm not making a comparable of our abilities or careers, but when Michael came into the team at Liverpool, they were strong. They were top end of the league. We were kind of battling with the Dogs of War. That's that's at the end of the day, Everton were the Dogs of War, and we were kind of bottom end of the league for quite a while, and kind of a lot of the younger ones were in and out of the team at times. So it was different circumstances. Michael went in and was he burnt out? Was he as quick as he wasn't even as quick as me?
No, he wasn't.
I don't know how he managed to get them hamstring injuries out. All right, but he did play a lot of games, and he probably played a lot more games than me in the earlier part, and maybe that was a detriment to him. I played for nearly 19 years in the end across the divisions, and I did have knocks and niggles and injuries, but made it through, and obviously not to the level that he played at, but. Maybe he just got so much exposure, so much football so early that it did have an impact on him. At the level he played at.
Fair enough. So that season there was two captains. Gary Speed was one of them. Just what were your memories? Obviously, we know what's happened to Gary since then. What are your memories of Gary Speed? Was he a good player, good captain to work alongside?
Yeah, he was an unbelievable guy. A player. I saw him play for Leeds against Arsenal, and he was just, even then he was fantastic. And then to play with him at Everton, he just had this stature about him, physique and powerful and great in the air, and he just had this on the pitch. He just carried this stature, but off the pitch he was the same. Even though you'd think he was maybe he probably looked a bit arrogant on the pitch the way he kind of played, because he dominated so much. When he came off the pitch, he was just, he was a great guy. He was a good leader. For the young lads, he was just, great there to give you advice, give you a kick when you needed a kick. But he was just, a great all-rounder, really. And again, obviously, sad with what did happen with Gary and circumstances. But I think he'll always be fondly, remembered for being such a fantastic player on the field, but just how he was as a captain on and off the pitch, he truly did lead by example, really.
Yeah. And then the other captain was Duncan Ferguson at that time as well. So a bit of a comparison and a bit of difference in personality. So from an outsider looking in, Duncan was, I think, our generation's main hero. I think we'd like to say. How was he in comparison to Gary Speed? What was he like as a captain and a player to play with in and out? On and off the pitch.
You probably heard this before. He spoke with Bowley and people like that. I think very, very much. How do I would explain it? I think people probably never really realised what Dunk was like. So his stature and his the way he kind of come across on the pitch and aggressive, and he's a man mountain, and everybody thought he was only good. He was unbelievable with his feet and his link up play and the rest of it. And he did come across as this big, fierce, ferocious, intimidating guy, but he wasn't, off the pitch. He was again a great fellow, good with the young, especially with the younger players, because he'd been a young lad coming through himself. A lot quieter than people probably expected, and more unassuming off the pitch, and was a different kind of character. I mean, he liked a bit of a laugh and a joke, but not as much. Gary Speed was quite bubbly and outgoing, and Dunk was a lot more chilled out and quite quiet, and very different in characters. Most certainly, but exactly the same on the pitch. Very different in how they kind of led on the pitch. By example, Dunk led on the pitch with aggression and dominance, and pretty much striking fear into people the way he kind of come across. Whereas Gary just kind of led by his endeavour and his attitude and commitment and desire in a kind of different kind of way. So they were two different captains, but both great in different ways, and kind of one of those where you'd say two people you'd want in your dressing room and two people you'd want in your trenches.
Yeah. Does it surprise you to see Duncan on the backroom staff now then? Or do you think he always has it? Because I don't think he was ever, touting himself to be a coach, was he? So the fact that he's been there for a number of years now.
I remember I went in to help out with some coaching a number of years ago with a lot of the academy staff that are still there now, and Dunk was just kind of starting out with his coaching. He was out with Kevin Sheedy with the 15s and 16s group, and he was quite quiet and maybe a bit more of an introvert on the field. And obviously over the years, his coaching and his management styles have obviously grown and developed with that as well. And probably, if you'd have asked me when I first went over to help out with the coaching at Everton, if I thought he was going to be a coach or a manager, I would have been probably not. Just the way his personality was, but I think he's just grown into it fantastically, and it's no surprise now he's having a massive impact. I think he's got a massive say in how Dominic Calvert-Lewin's doing as well in relation to you look at the difference between last season and this season, and it's there's some of them attributes of Duncan Ferguson, powerful in the air, being more aggressive, putting his body about, and just being a threat everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. To stick with the theme of strikers, Danny, I mean, that season, 97-98, we brought Mikhail Madar in. Now, he'd done an interview very recently with the official Everton website, and he had great things to say about the club, the fans, the players. What was Mikhail Madar like?
He was a great fella. Couldn't really understand him to begin with, and he was like a cross between William Wallace, like a Spanish Egyptian William Wallace, and maybe I don't know. It sounds really bad, but a poor man's Mark Hughes. But he was a great fella, and in training he always worked his socks off, and I think it was one of those where when he come in, people were like, really, never heard of you, and and he had big shoes to fill as well, which is always going to be difficult at Everton with some of the strikers they've had over the years as well. So it was, but he was a great fella, and I think one thing that I think Everton fans would say is that regardless of maybe not scoring as many goals as he maybe would have hoped, the one thing I always felt is he did work hard, and he did put a shift in, and things didn't always go for him, and maybe wasn't always as pleasing on the eye, but he had a good attitude to want to work his socks off, and that was important.
In that interview there with the Everton website, he did say that he absolutely loved Howard Kendall. Now Howard said in his autobiography he was big on team spirit, he was big on meals out. Don Hutchison called it Chinese Tuesdays up at Sheffield United. So when Howard was your manager and that group of players, were you all close? Was there a team spirit in going out, and were you all friends?
Yeah, I mean, this was new to me coming into the first team environment, and that was probably, in some ways, maybe a bit of a detriment to me as part of my development. I maybe should have spent a bit more time in around the youth setup and the reserve setup, rather than being involved in the camaraderie and the team bonding and the social side. But it was something that the manager, that the gaffer was massive on, and I mean, the rude awakening for me on that side of it was when we travelled down to play Wimbledon. We're going down to play the Crazy Gang, and we came in on the Monday morning, and he said, a normal Monday session, he said, I'm going to give you some info tomorrow regarding travelling, and we're going to travel down to Wimbledon on Wednesday. And I'm thinking, Wednesday? When do we play? We're playing Thursday or Friday night football. And so we told us on the Tuesday we were travelling on Wednesday to go down to Wimbledon, and so he said, bring your stuff to travel. So I just took me, and there was a few of us younger lads, I just took me travel tracksuit and a spare pair of undies and socks and that, and got down there, and we got down to the hotel, and he said, right, see you in the reception on Friday morning to go through the team stuff. I'm thinking, what am I going to... I've got no other clothes. What am I going to do till Friday? And it was literally like the lads went down, and they'd been used to going down and going for a meal on the evening and having that social time. And then obviously we start preparation on the Friday. So it was a 3-day build up to a game, and but he just wanted the players to be, rather than be distracted by friends and family and kids and all the rest of it, squad together, social time together, and prepare that way. And it kept that togetherness, like you probably speak about later, of that, togetherness at the back end of the season, of fighting for each other and having each other's backs.
Well, you mentioned there that the back end of the season, that season 97-98 is always going to be remembered for what if. I mean, we had Coventry on the last game of the season, and even a victory wasn't going to guarantee us. If Bolton won at Chelsea, we were still down. It was that bad. We've had Michael Ball, Alan Myers on the show. We've had Tony Grant on the show, Gareth Farley on the show, and they all said the same thing. The enormity of that game was huge. So the build up first, Danny, if you don't mind, the build up to that game, the Monday to Friday at Belfield or the Saturday. What was it like for you as a young player? Were you feeling the pressure of that game? Did you realise the enormity of it?
I did realise the enormity of it, but I think that was probably one thing. Obviously, I've not seen the interview with Gareth Farley, so I don't know how he felt and whether he felt pressure. But I always felt that because we had such young and inexperienced players in the squad, they didn't really know what to expect from that sort of situation. Right. So the lack of experience, I think, really probably played a little bit of its part in younger players in the squad not worrying and not panicking and not crumbling under pressure. And I think that the older heads kind of carried us through the experience side, and the younger players kind of just went with no expectation and played with a little bit more freedom and less apprehension. And that's how I felt. You know, I went into the game and it was massively important, of course. But I just went. I wanted to just go and run around and work my socks off and do well. And I just wanted to win, and I just wanted to perform, and that was it. You know, I didn't want to think about everything else.
Well, you came on as a substitute that game. We were 1-0 up. You won a penalty. We missed it. And I swear to God, Danny, I was there. It started raining. It started getting dark. Coventry scored. And in the crowd that day, I mean, Andrew was there as well. There's a famous video. Andrew was on the pitch. I think he's still got some Everton grass under his bed of that day. But
some hair stuck to his top lip. Yeah.
You know what? When Coventry scored and the anxiety in that ground, because Chelsea were only 1-0 up at that point, and we knew that things could very, very quickly go sour. That 15 minutes at the end of the game on the pitch, was that just a nightmare for you as a player?
Again, I was just full of adrenaline of just wanting to run around and just do something, just try and create something and just be involved and just do all I could. So I didn't really focus on anything else. It's probably more numb now. Even now, it gives you goosebumps. Really,
it does. Yeah.
It was a cutthroat situation, but we all we could do was what we could do and rely on other people. So that was kind of it until Wiggy popped up with his little wonder strike.
Yeah. Tell you what though, Danny, it was a definite penalty, wasn't it?
100%. Again, if VAR was to be present at the time, it would have definitely been a penalty on VAR as well.
So after the game, was the big celebrations, or was it just more relief and let's just get into the summer and go again?
Yeah, we just sat there really quiet and we all went home to our own houses and TV and watched Match of the Day. We got together and we enjoyed ourselves a little bit and celebrated the fact that we knew we'd underachieved over the course of the season for the club, but it became a victory because we'd accomplished a goal of staying in the division, which was massively vital for the club and for the fans.
Yeah. And then in the summer, Walter Smith came in that summer, didn't he? Replaced Howard Kendall. What were your feelings on Howard Kendall going? Obviously, you're saying there he built up a good camaraderie in the squad and stuff. Were you disappointed to see him go?
Yeah, I was. I had a really good relationship with him, and I liked him as a manager. But I do think it was the game was progressing and the game was changing, and the game was becoming more physical and athletic, and the professionalism of the Premier League was doing that. So times change, and I think that Walter Smith coming in was probably the right time, as the right time for progression of the club and new ideas, and obviously he had that, and he brought in Archie Knox, who'd been involved with Manchester United as well. So there was, I think there was mixed feelings. We all had a really good relationship with Howard Kendall, but Again, it was onwards and upwards.
And then was Walter Smith and Archie Knox coming in? Was that what you expected them to be? Were they like what you expect them to be like? Did they make big change? What were they like when they first came in?
I couldn't understand them. I thought the Scousers were a nightmare to understand. And then these Scottish guys come in and I'm like, "Hey, Danny, I can't hear." So, yeah, it was different. I mean, they brought a few Scottish guys in with them as well. Alex Cleland and Richard Gough came in, and John Collins came in. And I don't think who else came in at the time.
Brought the core and Materazzi, that was that summer, wasn't it?
Materazzi and did Mark Pembridge come in, but he was Welsh and nobody could, even they couldn't understand him. So I think some good players came in. Top foreign players, some Scottish players that come in with a bit of grit and determination, and it was a big transition at the club.
I mean, it would be 4 years from this point in the story before you left Everton, so you were there for sort of Walter's whole era at Everton, if you will. Now, we as fans at the time, I think we were quite critical of him at present in the time because some of the tactics were negative, the transfer windows were bad. But looking back now at the whole story that you hear now, that he was under quite a bit of pressure and he didn't have the funds to really improve the team, and maybe his back was against the wall. How would you look back at, in hindsight, Walter Smith's role or job as the Everton manager from the inside?
I think for me, in a lot of respects, it was very beneficial because he brought Archie Knox in and he came in, he coached. He coached me, and that helped me develop to a certain degree. And he brought some good players, be it towards the back end of the careers, like some Mark Hughes, and you probably again go and speak about Kevin Campbell and people like that came in, and then the younger ones like Olivier Decourt and Marco Materazzi and Thomas Gravison and people like that came in. So we had a good blend of some top up and coming young players, some young players locally, and some experienced pros that came in. So I think that was only boded itself to help the club have a structure and a foundation to build on. But then again, like I said, further down the line, progression needed to happen again. And, it's hard. I'm not a manager. So how can I question his ability to be able to keep the club in the Premier League, which ultimately he did contribute towards that. And, we look back now and it could have been so different. So
Absolutely.
There's a lot, there would have been negatives, but there was a lot of positives, I think, as well. And I think where the club are now is, has got some bits to do with him as well, and stability.
Okay, well, just to go back to that summer, like I said previously, we've had Tony Grantham, we've had Gareth Farrelly on, and they didn't really get on with Walter. They were called the bomb squad. I think they went to Everton to train with Slaven Bilic for about 6 or 7 months, and then they brought in, like Andrew said there, John Collins, Marco Materazzi, Olivier Decourt. Now, Materazzi and Decourt in particular, they've went on to, it hurts me to say as an Everton fan, to bigger and better things. They won trophies at different clubs. John Collins didn't quite work out. Those 3 players in particular, what are your memories of those 3 players from the inside, training day to day and playing with them, Collins, Materazzi and Decourt?
Again, great, but I think you said about the bomb squad, they were actually, Don Hutchinson named that squad the Chicken Bindies. They'd been binned and we didn't get to go out for any curries anymore, so they were in the Chicken Bindy, and I dipped in the Chicken Bindy squad from time to time. So it was a famous squad at the time. But I think, kind of going back to what you were saying with regards to them players, different cultures, different mentalities. Olivier Decourt came in, technically really good, really small, really aggressive for a little slight fella. Flipping heck, he was.
Yeah, he had a nasty streak. He got some red cards, didn't he? Yeah.
He was horrible, but it probably didn't work because Marco. So he was tiny and he was horrible and used to kick the life out of everybody in training. And then we brought Marco Materazzi in, who was about 6'7", and he was like the biggest, softest guy you've ever come across. But he was a bit rash. So all of a sudden you had Materazzi coming in, trying to 2-foot Olivier Decourt, and Olivier Decourt just absolutely kicking the life out of him. And it was like, we're all stood back going, what's going on here? We're the English guys that are meant to be like dogs of war, and these two are coming in kicking lumps out of each other, and then Marco would be crying, Olivier would be telling him to it it was mental, and all this kind of camaraderie and team bonding and all that. All of a sudden turned into, it was like ultra aggressive and competitive. So that side of it was great. And listen, they were top players. I mean, Michael was just learning his trade at the time before he went on to do what he did, and Olivier probably a little bit the same as well. So, good experiences for me as a player playing with players like that.
Yeah, I think Duncan left that season, and you were sort of thrust into partner Ibrahima Bakayoko, but it was the season we just couldn't seem to score at Goodison. We had a lot of 0-0s. We scored about 3 goals by Christmas, but yourself, you did score 3 goals away from home. But your partnership with Bakayoko, I think as fans, we thought that would be really good. It never quite took off. Was it just the wrong league for Ibrahima, was it? He wasn't quite suited to it?
I couldn't understand him. He couldn't understand me. He couldn't understand himself. It was, I don't know. How do you... He was one of them types of players that he would do things in training and you'd be like, how's he done that? And then he'd be looking like he didn't know he'd done it either. So he was a top player, but I think he just struggled to transfer. We used to see things in training and it was like he brought a stunt double on a match day that just replicate what his stunt double was doing on the training. But it was hard. I mean, probably really difficult for him. I don't think he adapted to the culture of Liverpool too well, and you need to pick up the lingo, lads, so you can get on with the Scousers and that, mates. And he just didn't sit with him, so it was difficult. And obviously, I was still trying to forge my way in the team, and effectively, I'm probably in competition with him a little bit, really, and that was a difficult time.
Well, it wasn't until later on in the season, really, where the goals came. We were in trouble again. It looked like we might have another Coventry, and Kevin Campbell came in and he scored 9 goals in 6 or 7 games, and we went from on the brink to being okay. Now, as fans, I think from when Duncan left, we were looking for a number 9, and Kevin came in and he gave it. Was that the same for you internally as a team? Were you needing a number 9 to go front and do the hard work?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I was buzzing because I was an Arsenal fan and he was one of my heroes. So for him to come to us ago, I was Kevin Campbell. Wow! Yeah. But his personality, just before he even got on the pitch, he turned up at the training ground and he was a big personality, and he just had that presence. So straight away, it was like before he even went out onto the pitch, you're thinking, yeah, this is the guy. Yeah. And then he come out onto the pitch and he was the big stature on the pitch. He'd hold the ball up, he'd bring people into play, he was scoring goals, he'd win headers, and all of a sudden, it built a load of confidence amongst the squad of a platform to build off. And, like I said, like you mentioned before, scoring a few goals and building a bit of confidence in the dressing room on and off the pitch just made such a big difference. And, it lifted the fans, so there was more of a buzz when you walked out onto the pitch. So, he brought the whole package for me, and I think you're right. I think he was the number 9 that the fans were itching to have back, on the pitch in the stadium.
It's strange because we had yourself, he was the young player we all loved. Then we had Bakayoko, who we hoped would be the foreign player who would go on and be the foreign star, but we didn't quite have that, someone who'd score 12 or 13 goals and do all the hard work and be the captain. And when he came in, it just made such a difference, didn't it?
Yeah, like I said, he was just kind of the whole package. Again, he came through the door with experience. Played at big clubs, been abroad. Had the presence, captaincy, just had that, he had that bit of charisma around him that he just led, and people wanted to be led by him, so it was just and I think he come at the right time. He was just the perfect fit for Everton, really. The fans just gravitated to him, the players gravitated to him, and he just come in and just loved the club, he just became not quite a full born again Scouser, but like myself, but he was almost. But no, he was just a perfect fit.
Yeah, as fans, we were made up with him. I remember him coming in and scoring goals. He just lifted, and the whole place got a buzz when he came. I remember it. And then he built up a relationship with Franny Jeffers. Then, didn't he? There was sort of the two of them building up that relationship. Remember on Match of the Day, he sort of used to break down the play a couple of times and that. Was that frustrating? I mean, how did you find that? Obviously, another striker.
It was difficult. Listen, I'd played with Franny in the youth team, and Franny was a fantastic player. He was. Me and Franny had a good relationship, playing in the youth cup. We won the youth cup, and he built that relationship with Kev, and it just happened like that. It wasn't, you could see the first couple of training sessions Franny come up with us, and they were on the same team, 5-a-side, and it was just goals going in left, right, and centre. And I was thinking, I probably started to feel the way that Michael Branch maybe started to feel when I was coming through.
Yeah,
and I then picked up I was in the team, which was, for me at the time, was great, but I picked up a little ankle injury, and Franny got his chance off the back of that, and I just knew when I picked up that ankle injury and I was on the on the sidelines, I knew what to expect, because the relationship in training was just instinctive. They were Everton's version of York and Cole. They just knew where each other were. The relationship was great, and it was for Everton fans, and even for us, for us as players, to watch them play was a joy to see them play together and score and create and set each other up. And it was hard as a player not being able. I couldn't get back in the team, but we were playing well and we were winning games, and they were scoring goals. So you kind of learn to understand it, and it was good times. It was difficult as a player on the sideline, but also it was good times because the team was on the trajectory in the right direction.
Yeah, and then you say that you play with Franny at youth level, and so you obviously knew him coming through, and it wasn't long before Arsene Wenger took him to Arsenal. Just did you think he went a bit, and obviously it didn't work out for Arsenal? I mean, he said Bergkamp was there, Kanu, other these top players, he didn't quite fit in there. Do you think he probably went a bit too soon?
Yeah, I think he should have just. I think he just should have stayed at Everton for life. It was. He come into the team. The fans loved him. He was scoring goals. He had a good relationship with, with Kevin Campbell, and it didn't really matter. Even, it didn't matter who he played with. He just, he fed off other people as well. So Everton was the right place for him. And listen, you got to be honest. I'm an Arsenal fan, so I was jealous to death when he got flipping picked up by Arsenal.
Well, that's it. At that time, the Arsenal team were that good. You couldn't blame them for going, could you? I suppose even.
Of course not. It's an opportunity of a lifetime to go and play for a club like Arsenal, and play with some of the players they had at the time. Yeah. So to turn that down, it would have been the hardest decision of anybody's life, and you would always look back and wonder what if. So, he's followed an opportunity, but it's always, we always talk about hindsight, and the hindsight, I think that his career could have been unbelievable at long term at Everton, and unfortunately that didn't happen at Arsenal.
The following season, 99-2000, you went on loan to Fulham. You only played 3 times for Everton that season, and it looked to us as fans that you were maybe on your way out. But you came back in 2000 from your loan spell with Fulham, and I remember 2 games back to back. It was Arsenal and Chelsea at home in November, and we won both. Yourself and Kevin Campbell scored in a 2-0 and a 2-1 victory against Arsenal and Chelsea. Again, it's similar to the 97 game against Arsenal. We were backs to the wall. We were, bookies wouldn't take money on Arsenal to beat Everton or Chelsea to beat Everton those 2 weekends. But we did. We were Everton. We came out fighting. You scored a goal each weekend. Memories of those 2 games, because they were great for us as fans to watch.
Yeah, I've got to rewind slightly, but I went on loan to Fulham, and it was the greatest loan spell I've ever had in my life. Not for anything other than, and not that I condone getting sent off, I got sent off for kicking Jason McAteer.
Yes.
Kicking Jason McAteer from Liverpool FC.
Andrew, there's the advert for this podcast right away. There it is.
I come back, but I had a bit of a point to prove, because I'd gone out on loan lost my place in the team and gone to play some games, and when I came back, I was hungry and raring to kind of stake my claim, get in the team, and no better games. Arsenal and Chelsea again. It had to be Arsenal, didn't it?
Yeah.
Had to be Arsenal. So I obviously scored against Arsenal and the game against Chelsea. So 2 great games, 2 really good performances. Like you said, odds against us, but we played well in the games. I think there was a bit of the dogs of war mentality had come back into the team as well, and like I said, we were odds on to be beaten in them 2 games, and we kicked and fought and scrapped first of all, and then we scored good goals, and and then we had to the back end, backs to the walls, and put the tin hats on and scrap to keep the points, and that's what we did. And it was great games.
Do you remember Michael Ball took a little dive and Hasselbank? You got him in that game, and Hasselbank got sent off. We've had Bally on the show, and he's adamant that Hasselbank caught him, but I think the camera said a little bit different, to be honest.
I've known Bally long enough today. He used to scream and flaming roll around all over the pitch in training, and said I caught him as well. So, there's no chance Hasselbank caught him, but at the end of the day, it was a part and parcel of the game management, and call them dark arts, and that ended up being something that benefited us as a team to get him off, because he was a top player, he was a handful, and it played into his hand, really.
Yeah. Ball's a friend of the show. I'm sure he'll listen to this one and love that we've mentioned him again. But look, we thought that you were back then, and it didn't quite work out. Before we get to that summer 2000 when you were back, the arrival of Paul Gascoigne, an absolute football legend. Now, we didn't quite see the best of Gaza in an Everton shirt, although we did see glimpses of what he once was. But I'm sure you, as a teammate of Paul Gascoigne, were grinning to be playing alongside him. What are your memories of Paul Gascoigne at Everton Football Club?
Oh, I could be here all night. On and off the pitch. Listen, it was Gaza, wasn't it? It was an unbelievable legend. Again, he was playing in them Italian football games on Channel 4 when I was watching Marcel Desailly as well. So another legend. I was just absolutely buzzing when he joined, and I think what he brought to the table in training was, even though he was getting to the back end of his career, he was still unplayable. Players couldn't get anywhere near him in training, and he was just. It wasn't that he was quick. He had deceptive strength. It wasn't like he was this big Duncan Ferguson muscle man. He was just used his body well. You couldn't get the ball off him. He'd been crying hysterics in training because he thought it was that funny that you couldn't get the ball off him, and then you'd be getting angry, and then he'd nutmeg you, and then it was incredible. But he brought charisma again to a bit of fun to the changing room and to training as well. And I think it was Walter Smith and Archie Knox were quite. Archie, they used to rule a little bit with the iron fist. I got on really well with both of them, but when the gaffer raised his voice, when Walter Smith raised his voice, even Duncan Ferguson was like stood to attention. There was the only person that ever got like a half a smile out of Walter Smith was like Gaza. It was like that bit of cheeky kind of, how are you, gaffer? Come on, man. And he's like, you're thinking, and like the gaffer was, so it was great to have him in there, because you kind of knew that he could work the manager a little bit, and for a day off here and there, or a little bit lighter on the training session, if we were all feeling a bit stiff, he'd drop some in, and he could get away with it a little bit. But he was a top player, and again, just great, especially with the young kids. He was just a big kid. He was just one of us.
Yeah, Alan Myers was on the show last year, and he said Paul just loved Belfield. He never left. It was head tennis with the groundsman. He loved it. Yeah,
he was. With everybody, whoever he could get, he'd try and get Mary out of the kitchen down for a game of head tennis. Dave Ash, the janitor, and like some of us, we couldn't go home. We were YTs, and we were probably on less than minimum wage, or almost on less than minimum wage as a YTS, and then. You'd want to go home for your tea because your landlady would have it on the side, and he won't let you leave. How are you, man? Just another game, like, come on. At 8 o'clock at night. So, he just loved football. He just loved training and playing, and that was it. He was just besotted by the game.
We are a podcast for both clubs, Everton and Liverpool. This is an Everton show, so as long as we're on this show, one person who can't come on is the player that Paul Gascoigne replaced, Mr. Nick Barmby, who in our eyes done the unthinkable. Now, you've admitted you're an Arsenal fan, and I realise the guys in the dressing room in 2000 are not boycott Evertonians, so it might not hurt, but when he done that he crossed the park to go to Liverpool, and not only did he cross the park, but there's rumours that he pushed for it, he asked to go, and that hurt us as Blues. From the inside the training grounds, how did you view that move? Was it brave, risky?
I think within the group that I kind of socialised with within the dressing room, I think it was surprise really as well that that he'd gone. Do you know something? This might sound terrible, but I think we were just surprised that they actually wanted him. Because, look, he was a good footballer and England international, but, he wasn't. You'd think that if Liverpool wanted to nick your best player and make a statement, take a player from you, they want to nick your best player and make a massive statement. And who do you take there? You try and nick Gary Speed, or you try and nick Duncan Ferguson, or they're never going to go. But
or Danny Cadamarteri.
Sorry,
or Danny Cadamarteri.
Yeah. Who's never going to go, lad?
Exactly.
So I think a lot of the lads really thought, well, ultimately it's not the biggest loss from the squad.
Yeah.
He was a good footballer and the rest of it, but he wasn't a 40 goal a season player. He wasn't the big target man, number 9. He wasn't in all reality. He wasn't the biggest fans' favourite. The Duncan Ferguson, Gary Speed, Dave Unsworth, Dave Watson kind of Evertonian anyway. So yeah, he went and people were surprised, but we all moved on pretty quick. Yeah. I hope you don't see this podcast.
Yes, so do we. He's not invited to watch it. Turncoat.
We hate it.
And just to round out the Everton career before we do move on and wrap this up, the leaving of Everton, I think you were transfer listed, and in 2001 you came out in the press. The BBC reported that you had a quote saying that you just wanted first team football. So, first question, was it just naturally the end for you at Everton? And second question is, were you gutted at leaving Everton as well?
Yeah, I think it was well documented. I'd had issues off the pitch as well, and I think I'd just got to a point really. I'd been in and out of the team. I couldn't see myself starting a lot of games, and maybe my attentions had been turned. And I ended up I felt like my career was probably not going to continue and keep going in the right direction. And I just wanted to play. I loved it. Listen, I came from Cleckheaton to go to Liverpool. You ever been to Cleckheaton?
No. I can't say I have, to be honest, no.
It is the original Woolly Backlands. Okay. So to go from fields and farms to Liverpool as a young kid is an experience on its own. To move into a family of digs with Evertonians, proper Scousers, and on your first night, get a pan of Scouse, get that down, you lads. It was unbelievable, the experience, and I loved it. I loved all my friends that I made in Liverpool, and I've still got now. Was amazing. The club, my time there was unreal, but I needed to kind of take a step back and think about what was going to help me long term, and I need to play football matches. Yeah. And at the time, Bradford City, which was again, I lived between Bradford and Huddersfield, come in and wanted to take me, and it was going home back to Yorkshire, and it was probably the right time to go and play games.
Yeah, look, we're going to wrap things up, Danny. I mean, we massively appreciate your time to talk all things Everton, but let's talk quickly what you're doing now. I mean, you've coached at youth level, at Burnley, at Oldham, at the national side with England's under-18s, under-17s, and you've got your own academy. But first of all, coaching at youth level, is that something you're really passionate about, something you enjoy?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed. Obviously, I enjoyed my career playing at senior level, and they call it performance. Moving into development and teaching and coaching, something that I wasn't sure about in the early days. Mm-hmm. Dipped my toe in and just loved it. So, since then I've just continued, and I've been offered a couple of opportunities over the last few years to go back into performance and, senior management at lower league and first team coaching. And I did a little bit of the first team coaching at Oldham as well. And, I've enjoyed that, but I love coaching, I love development, I love teaching and being involved in progression of kids and helping kids hopefully do what I did.
Yeah, I mean, and you've got your own academy now, which is obviously the Soccer Academy. Now, I had to Google before, and it's got absolutely fantastic reviews, and I had to look at the website. It looks really, really great facilities. So, and you've got educational programs there as well. Can you tell us some more about Soccer Academy?
Yeah, I mean, I started it 6 years ago now, and it was something that I was passionate about. I wanted kids to be given an opportunity to be able to be coached by good coaches and a good level, and not just think that every kid that's in an actual academy deserves that chance. Grassroots kids deserve that, and try and bridge the gap and get kids opportunities into pro clubs. So it kind of went from there, and we're at 87 kids now that have signed from our program into pro clubs. We will start next year in our scholarship program, which will be our first under 17 squad, which we're in the process of now putting together and finalising things for the education program. We've got 5-year-olds through to 16 turning to 17-year-olds in a girls program. So it's going great. It's doing what it says on the tin. It's developing kids across every spectrum, not just for all the best players. We've got players that are just beginning and learning to play, and onwards and upwards. And it's exciting times for us as well at the moment.
Good stuff, yeah. So, what in terms of youth development, when you were a youth team player, it was different than the setup that it is now. Now it's an under-23 system, and the first team is sort of separated. Back in the day, it was if you're good enough, you play for the reserves. You just had the mini derby, Pontons League, and all that. What technically, the you can say players now, the players coming through your Fodens and whatever, are technically more gifted. Do you think it's a better system, or would you say being involved with the first team at an earlier age is a better way to do it?
I don't know. I think it's probably a difficult one for me because I came through the system of playing Lancashire youth football and, like I said, the Pontins League, and we played in the A League, and one week we'd play against Liverpool the same age. I'd play against Michael Owen, Stephen Gerrard, and then the following week we'd play against Prescott Cable, and they'd just kick the life out of you, and it was a baptism of fire. So playing in them types of games, I think helped us develop as young kids. And I think maybe my one kind of query these days is when you play in 18s football and 23s football, is that you kind of generally, I know you're allowed a couple of overage players in the 23 leagues, but you're generally playing against the same people for a few years. So, like I said, I've kind of got mixed feelings and mixed emotions. What I've tried to do with the under 18 squads I've had at Burnley and more recently at Oldham is put young players that were like my age when as a YT out into youth loan and put them into non-league or men's football at clubs and give them that experience so that it potentially prepares them hopefully to play in your club's first team, but if not, to play in somebody's first team. And that's been one thing that I think has been really, really important for young players in the last few years, is getting them opportunities to play men's football.
Yeah. So for you, Danny, is that it now? The future is the academy and youth football, or do you see yourself moving back into senior football at some point?
We'll see. Obviously, I've taken a break out of Oldham to focus on what we're doing with the academy at the moment. I needed to spend a lot of time finalising that programme, and I've kind of stepped away from Oldham to be able to do that. But if an opportunity comes that's the right opportunity for me and an experience that I'm going to enjoy and grasp with both hands, then I'll certainly look at it. I enjoy coaching, I enjoy development. Whether I'll move into the senior side, who knows? Like I said, I'm still very much fixed in development at this moment in time, and any opportunities that I look at the moment will be in development, unless Kroenke rings me up and says he needs me to go and manage and coach the Arsenal first team.
Look, guys, we wouldn't put our name behind something that's not really good. Go and check it out. It's www.thesocceracademy, kids being KID, a play on words there. Fantastic facilities based up in Bradford, and the educational programs look absolutely amazing. We back it here at the podcast. Danny, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to someone who put the ball in the Reds' net for Everton Football Club.
You nearly said it.
I nearly said it, but we're family friendly. Danny, top lad, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for joining us on Across the Park podcast.
No problem. Thanks for the invite.
Thanks very much, Danny. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very
See
much.
you later. Bye now. Cheers. Thank you.